Ryan, we've learned that the 5 main learning styles happen to be kinesthetic learning, more like hands-on experiences, physical activity or movement, reading and writing, auditory, or even visual.
Yeah.
Do you feel that you identify with one of these learning styles?
Definitely visual. Throughout my grade school and high school, I definitely preferred when teachers would draw like diagrams on the boards or show a video to get you to learn a subject. I definitely prefer visual as opposed to like writing things down. I have like sort of a memory for photographs and pictures of things, so it helps me to remember things better through visual learning, which is hard to get through distance learning as opposed to in-person learning in that scenario.
Okay, Ryan, in recent times, AI tools have become a significant resource for students and educators. Have you used these tools before, first of all?
Yes, in many ways.
Yes. Do you think that they are used in a positive manner most times?
I think they can be. I think students definitely can find a way to abuse them for less practical reasons, as like getting answers to a quiz. But I think if there were, they can be used positively for like taking notes or taking a big article and slimming it down, things like that.
In your experience, have you used AI tools?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
If you don't mind, would you elaborate on if you've used these tools in a positive manner, or have you used them in ways that educators may not like?
I've used them in both. For example, quizzes that you could take at home. It's much easier to just ask AI for the answers than to actually go in your book and figure it out yourself. But I also used it for positive things like helping me take notes about a book or anything that I had to study, or like helping me figure out math equations of some sort if I didn't feel like getting my calculator out. But no, I have also used them in negative ways that probably impacted my education. But yeah, I think if done right, they can be good.
So in that case, do you think that it would be wise for educators to implement specific regulations for AI tools?
I think so, yes. If they if students weren't allowed to use AI on quizzes and such, and if they could like have blockers on their computer that stop them from even being able to open the app while they're taking a quiz or test, and only allowing them to use AI for, say, taking notes or anything else you can think of that would be beneficial. But yeah.
Have you noticed in your experience if your grades have differed between in-person education and distance education?
Yeah. During distance education, I found it so easy to just like lay in bed and just hop on class with your camera off and not actually really engage in the activities of the day. As opposed to when you go to class in person, you have to be there, and not that you're forced to learn, but I'm more inclined to pay attention when I'm actually there with the other group and the teacher's looking at me, like when they can't see you through the camera, it's like you might as well just be asleep. And I noticed when I would take quizzes after not having paid attention in AI classes that my grades were not as well reflective as when I had in-person classes.
Can you tell me a little bit about your experience with education in general when the pandemic of COVID-19 hit?
Yeah, so I was at Keene State at the time, and right when we got back from winter break in January, we found out that, or like a couple weeks in, we found out that we were all going to be having to move home and all of our classes would be transferred online, and it was just such a shell shock that it impacted that semester heavily. I ended up dropping out of Keene because of that, because I just couldn't focus on my classes anymore, and I took that next year off because COVID was going on. I honestly didn't know what was going to happen with the world at all, so I figured I might as well try and make some money at a job than be in school at the time. But it went on for another, I think, 2 years after that. I went to a community college in the town over from me, and all my classes were online. And, I really didn't feel like I learned anything at all from my classes at the time. Yeah, like I did the work and made my way through, but I didn't feel like I learned anything like I had in the past, as opposed to being really physically in class. I felt like everyone started to kind of slack off during that time because it was online and you could use AI, for example, to cheat or whatever. I think it really just impacted education in a very negative way, in my opinion. But I think some people did find positive things about it, but I wasn't one of them.
Jamie, can you tell me a little bit about your experience with education in general, or your learning in general, when the COVID-19 pandemic hit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was in the middle of my junior year of college when COVID hit, and it was kind of like an abrupt occurrence, if you will. I was in all of my classes in person, and I was really getting into a lot of them. And then in the middle of it, we had a big pause, and then we had to switch over to the online learning, which was a big adjustment not only for myself but the teachers. So there was a lot of technical difficulties as far as the teachers went. A lot of them didn't really know how to use the online learning tools. So that was a big speed bump that we had. And then as far as personally, I just felt like it was a lot harder for me to get that really hands-on learning style that I am used to and that works really well for me as far. So it was really hard for me to get the same learning experience online as I did in person because I wasn't able to really be in class, get that hands-on learning experience. I wasn't able to do some of the activities that the teachers had planned for us. We really had to jump from one curriculum to an entire different one and adjust as we went. So it was a lot of like stop and go, and it wasn't as easy to really pick up the material. It wasn't as easy to focus while we were online. On the other hand, though, I did really appreciate being able to go through the classes in the comfort of my own home. So that was definitely a positive aspect of going into the online learning, but before that...
All right, Evan, can you tell me a little bit about your experience with education in general when the COVID-19 pandemic hit?
I would say it was a tricky adjustment, to be honest. I was pursuing my associate's degree during the onset of COVID, and that acclimating to that was really difficult to do, going from in-class learning, social, auditory, you're there, you're present, to hybrid, solely online learning. I feel like that takes away from a lot of aspects and just ways you can learn. Like you were really slimmed down. You were incredibly slimmed down to only so many options out of all of those learning styles, especially for somebody that like had to learn how to learn ADHD, you know what I mean? Like I had to figure out how I learned. The way I was able to learn best was taken away from me, and I had to acclimate to like hybrid online learning, Zooms. That was terrible. It was terrible. You could not focus on that, and then it's time management. You're crunching, you're figuring it out by yourself, sitting in a room, your room, you're not with people, you're isolated, and it was just an incredibly difficult process to, like I said, acclimate to that. It took me so long to just figure out how to, sit by myself at home with a textbook and my own time management and no like structure. There wasn't structure, there was a lack thereof. So, you're at home, in your room, you're not in like a structured environment, and you just have these distractions. There's so many distractions when you get taken away from like the classroom setting. It was really hard. Like getting my associate's degree for that process was incredibly difficult.